Morning, everyone. Welcome to the January 22nd, 2019 meeting of Henderson County Fiscal Court. You're really glad you're with us today. We'll begin, as we always do, with an invocation. And Deacon Larry Courtney from St. Paul's Episcopal is with us to lead us in prayer. Everybody please stand.
Let us pray. Almighty God, who sittest in the throne judging right, we humbly beseech thee to bless the courts of justice and the magistrates in all the land, and give unto them the spirit of wisdom and understanding, that they may discern the truth, and in partiality administer the law in the fear of thee alone, through him who shall come be our judge, thy Son, our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Magistrate Southern.
Here.
Magistrate Moran.
Here.
Magistrate McCollum.
Here.
Magistrate Berry.
Here.
Magistrate Putman is absent today.
And our thoughts and prayers are with Magistrate Putman and his family, who are at a funeral today for a family member, and he sends his regards, and we'll be thinking of him. You have in front of you the minutes, the special called meeting on January 8th, 2019 of Fiscal Court, and after a period of review, I'll entertain a motion to approve those.
Approved with one exception. We rehired somebody that I don't think we intended to. I can find it there. Our former clerk's name's on here. And
Sue Baker is a part-time.
Oh,
works
she
for
is
us
part-time. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's okay. Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other clarifications, corrections, or additions? Please call the roll.
Magistrate McCollum.
Aye.
Magistrate Berry.
Aye.
Magistrate Moran.
Aye.
Magistrate Southern.
Aye.
Thank you. Today is Kentucky Farm Bureau Checkout Week. In fact, the whole week is Kentucky Farm Bureau Food Checkout Week. It's a celebration of our agricultural community. And across the state, fiscal courts are passing proclamations to help celebrate Food Checkout Week and the work our farmers do. So we wanted to help them by proclaiming Food Checkout Week here, and I'll have Mr. Clerk read the proclamation.
Whereas Americans farmers are the most productive and efficient in the world, providing us with an ample supply of safe and affordable food, and whereas agribusiness is an important element of Henderson County's economy, with numerous local companies engaged in the production of food and fiber products, and whereas Henderson County farmers help feed our community, state, nation, and other peoples from around the world with the goods they produce, and whereas our citizens enjoy the most affordable food in the world, spending on average about 10% of their disposable income on food. And now, therefore, I, Brad Schneider, Henderson County Judge Executive, join with the Henderson County Fiscal Court to proclaim February 3rd through the 9th, 2019 as Food Checkout Week here in Henderson County.
How about a round of applause for our farmers? Are there any representatives of Kentucky Farm Bureau with us today? Thank you. Next up, we have the privilege of having with us Transportation Secretary Greg Thomas and a bunch of his team from District 2, of which we're very proud. And at this point, I'd like to have Secretary Thomas come up to the mic and welcome to Henderson County, Greg.
Thank you, Judge. And I just want to say thank you for the partnership with Henderson County and the opportunity to speak to you today. So thank you very much. From a high-level cabinet perspective, we are focused on the governor's priorities, and at the top of that list is jobs, jobs, jobs. And so we're doing everything we can to help bring in jobs to the state. The last cabinet meeting with economic development, they reported out 50,745 jobs that the governor has brought to the state since he assumed office. So we I just think that from my perspective that's the way out of our financial challenge in Kentucky, and we're focused from the Transportation Cabinet of supporting that effort. So along those lines, we are focused on SHIFT, our prioritization model. We're focused on bridges and pavements, as most of you know by now. And so we're also focused on projects that lead to direct job growth or projects that lead to retention of jobs. And so we're focused in that arena. But along with that, we're also cognizant of the fact that we're not just responsible for 27,000 miles of highway. There's also 80,000 miles that belong to, the additional miles belong to the counties, and we want to meet with you. That's why we're getting out and meeting with the counties to see, okay, what are your critical needs? We're looking for critical paving, bridges, what needs you have as it relates to jobs, retention, or direct job growth, or just some projects that are in dire need of attention with no funding. And so we're here to see where we can partner with you as a cabinet to bring about those projects. So that's really why we're here. I brought my experts with me. I have Denitra Henderson with me. Denitra, we really have some high-level talent in this cabinet, and some of those folks are here today. Denitra, one of those. Gary Valentine, who's with I-69, project manager, if anything like that. If you have concerns around I-69 Henderson Bridge. So that's why we're here, Judge, and we thank you for your support. So happy to let Denitra talk about what's going on locally here, or happy to turn it over to your folks, to your magistrates and anyone in terms of what they see as the needs in your community. So.
I'd be happy to have Denitra Henderson come on up if you want to say anything about what's going on in District 2, the largest by geographic area of all your districts. And so it's a tough job, but they do it well.
All right, thank you. I can give an update of a few projects we have going on in Henderson County. We have a little bridge project here, if y'all have heard. But that one, Gary Valentine, I keep combining yours and Marshall's names this morning. But Gary Valentine is a project manager for the I-69 bridge corridor. And, of course, we've had some public hearings on that recently, and we all know the status of the draft environmental impact statement and where that stands. So it's continuing to move forward, and we're also continuing the search for funding for the bridge. Besides that, we have several other things going on in Henderson County. Spottsville Bridge, another very important bridge in the county, is we're looking at a summer or fall letting on that one. There's significant utility coordination going on with that. So many utilities use that structure to get their utilities across. So we're coordinating that along with some coal mine grouting that needs to occur, and which of those utilities are part of the construction project, which ones do we need to have out of the way before we begin. So all of those are going on. We're shooting for late summer. We're hoping that we can make that, but if not, it will at least be this calendar year at a minimum. We also just recently had some high-friction surface let for the US 60 interchange ramps with US 41. So we've seen some wet weather crashes happen there, and you will see when it warms up some high-friction surface going down in that area. And those will be done, or that work will be completed by the end of July this year. Ohio Drive is a partnership that we have, speaking of partnership, Secretary, with the county. You received $500,000 in discretionary funds to help with the construction of the widening of that. And I understand that the overall project total is significant, and so we're a small part of that, and we look forward to working with the county on getting that widening completed. We also have several roads that are up for resurfacing this next summer. I won't go over those specifically, but if you have any questions, and then a couple bridges that will get a latex waterproofing overlay on them to help extend the life on those. And Bridging Kentucky is another priority to fix the bridges that we have first. We have 4 bridges in Henderson County. None of them are in the short-term quarterly outlook, except for Walton Lane that's under construction as an LPA project now. So I won't go through all the projects in detail. Those are just the highlights. If If anyone has any questions, we can ask. And I would like to introduce our staff, which many of you know if you're local, because they're the folks on the ground that get the work done and do a great job of it. I have hardly any complaints that come to my level from Henderson County, which speaks volumes that these guys here are doing their job. So we have Jason Ward is our PD&P branch manager. Cassie is a construction lead for the Henderson and surrounding counties. Nick Stallings is our maintenance engineer. And then Ethan is also an engineer, a staff engineer in the Henderson County office. So again, and you see Keith Todd over here. He's doing his work, taking pictures. But that's our staff in the district, and we are fortunate to be good partners with Henderson County.
Any questions of Denitra?
And I don't mean this, I really appreciate what all you all have done for us in the cabinet. Y'all have been great for Henderson County. We want to work with you, too. But I do want to work on funding. The Spotsville Bridge was in the 10-year plan in 1972. Not this administration, but a prior administration. I was county attorney and brought that up, and there was not enough money brought in during the 10-year plan to do 1 year's worth of money. Mm-hmm. And I know there's some talk about raising the gasoline tax, which effectively hasn't been changed at all, and putting some of it in the licensing where those people that have electric cars or high mileage will pay something there. We have to do something. We just can't continue to do what we're doing right now. It's not going to work. We got to come up with some funding.
Yep. We agree. We're in favor of additional funding. It's not up to us to prescribe how that happens. We've got a very good group of legislators in Frankfort that are aware of the issue. Conference last week, they spoke heavily about that, and they're looking at several different mechanisms that they could maybe put in place that would actually pass so that we could all have our roads and bridges completed in a timely manner.
And our county was one of the fiscal courts who passed a resolution supporting some sort of solution in funding. We didn't want to tell the legislative, the General Assembly how to do that exactly because they have a lot of options before them, but we very much support a solution of some sort. We sent that on to the proper authorities and hope they listen. We know this General Assembly session, it's a long shot, but hopefully it'll be something they focus on next year. So any other questions of Denitra? I do want to say that I didn't wear this I-69 pin just because you were coming, Secretary Thomas. I wear it every day. That's how important this is to us, and I really appreciate the work that Gary Valentine and Marshall Carrier and his team have done to get it this far. We've got a ways to go yet, I know. The public hearings that have been held in Henderson and Evansville were very constructive, very civil, very professional, I thought. And the team seemed to agree, and we're going to continue with two public listening sessions tomorrow at the Henderson Housing Authority at 5:30, and then Thursday at the Evansville Central Library at 5:30. And I hope that goes well. I know that Gary Valentine is going to be addressing the Planning Commission this evening. So we continue to do everything we can as a community to help in any way we can. So thank you for your work on that, and hopefully we'll get that solved too. All right. And I especially want to thank Secretary Thomas for coming by today, and I reiterate that our team in District 2 is great, terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you don't have to hang out unless you want to watch the sausage made for the rest of the morning. Thank you. Next, we have with us Keith Brock from Compass Municipal Advisors, one of our financial partners here at Henderson County, and I asked Keith to come up and brief us on the idea of defeasance, which is a way to help pay off bonds that counties hold, and in particular we're talking about bonds held by our jail for some of the expansions that have been done in the last several years. And I appreciate coming up this morning.
Thank you all for having me, and Lonnie Campbell with Keiko is with me as well.
And thank you, Lonnie.
Gave him the privilege of handing out the information. Unfortunately, I didn't bring an electronic a copy of it, so hopefully this will be sufficient. Like I said, thank you again. We really kind of want to go over the process and just kind of hopefully give you a little bit of education on how it would work and so forth. And the only real way for me to know how to describe that is to kind of start with the status quo. So the first few pages here in your handout, if you start with page 2, is really your existing debt summary. And so you can see on page 2, we've got a listing of your debt. Boxed in blue are the jail and the 911, which is essentially the county obligated portion of that debt. You can see in column E is illustrating the existing current balances of that debt, what is existing today. Column F is the interest rate range on that indebtedness, and then G obviously is the final maturity. But as it relates to defeasance or paying off debt early, column H is the most critical column because that's the bond call information. And so those are the dates of which those indebtedness can be paid off early. And you can see some of them are non-callable, which meaning they can't be retired early. And so that's pretty customary in municipal debt where you provide call protection to investors. Essentially, that's done. Market conditions kind of dictate that, but it also drives your borrowing costs down. So that's kind of your summary. You can see there's essentially four issues outstanding, various amounts and various call dates. Below, you can see the county's estimated legal bonding capacity, and obviously there's roughly $53 million there, which is indicative that you have low overall debt burden, which is a very positive thing. Going page 3 and 4, this is simply what the payment structure of that indebtedness looks like. Graphically is split out amongst the jail and the 911 communication project. You can see that in more detail on page 4. So these are your debt payments existing, assuming that the debt is paid all the way through its scheduled maturity. So understanding how your debt is structured today hopefully can lead us into the conversation on defeasance. The next couple of pages I'll just skip through is just a financial summary of both the general fund and the jail fund. And obviously, if things weren't in good shape, we probably wouldn't be having this discussion about paying off debt early. So, but I thought it was good idea to kind of give you a snapshot of the history there as well. So that kind of brings us full circle here to the point of the discussion, which is what is defeasance or cash defeasance or paying off debt early. It has all kinds of different terminology, but essentially the county has the right to make a provision to set aside money now that will match up to the future principal and interest payment on the existing debt up until the call date or through maturity. And so what you're talking about is taking money today and then matching that up to pay off those future debt payments. The money is essentially invested, so you buy investments that will then earn interest that will reduce your total out-of-pocket expenditure. And so that's essentially what we're talking about. There's a variety of different ways, I think, to accomplish it or structure that, but I've kind of focused on just assuming, it's kind of an all or nothing if you're going to just go ahead and pay off all of the indebtedness. So on the bottom of page 7 are those same debt service payment structure, but it's assumed to the call date or to the maturity date. So if we want to just kind of focus on the oldest issue, the 2012 bond issue, column B, you can see that the debt is originally scheduled to mature in 2023, but it's callable in June 1 of 2022. Flipping to page 8, the mechanics, what's involved, essentially, like I described, the money is set aside in what we call an escrow agreement. And so the money would be irrevocably pledged for the payment of that debt. So that's the mechanism that allows it to fall off your books once you set that money in that account. And so there's several folks involved in the process, including ourselves as financial advisors, but bond counsel would be the one that would draft that escrow agreement. There's typically a third-party CPA-type firm that would verify that the cash flows from those investments would satisfy that debt in order to get that defeasance or that legal requirement hurdle met, and then there's a bank that would hold the assets and make the payments on those bonds up until they're fully retired. There are some provisions in terms of the investment limitations. I won't go into all this now, but obviously KRS 66480, you can't just go out and buy any type of security. You're limited essentially to treasuries and agency-type securities. The U.S. Treasury issues what we call slugs, which are state and local government securities. They're the most common form of investment in this type of scenario. The sinking fund or the escrow fund is typically yield restricted, meaning that you're restricted to the bond yield, so you can't earn arbitrage, generally speaking. The IRS doesn't want you to take advantage of borrowing low and investing high and making riskless profits, so there's lots of rules surrounded why that is. Ultimately, that's a bond counsel discussion there, but typically they're yield restricted. And so we've kind of taken all that into account and tried to put a kind of a summary together of how this may look, some of the things you may think about in terms of considering the decision, and then kind of open it up to questions. So page 10, you can kind of see in the math side of the equation here, broken down by the four bond issues, the principal amount outstanding, maturity dates, the average current interest rate on the indebtedness, the call dates, some of that summary data, and then really I think to get to the gross math, which is at the bottom, which is a comparison of how much you would have to put in today versus what you would pay normally over time. And so you can see that's what we're calculating as the gross savings in terms of if you pay an amount, put it in today, invest that amount, and then pay that debt off either at maturity or at the redemption date. I know it's a lot of terminology I'm utilizing, but that's essentially the process.
On that page 10,
Mm-hmm.
line B, so that the jail bonds, the jail would save $36,000.
Correct. That's
And the next one on C, they'd save $91,000, and on E, they'd save $176,000.
That's a simple comparison of what your debt service is to the call or redemption date versus what you would have to put in the account today.
Would the jail be able to keep that money in their, that savings in their funds? I mean, I want to look to sort of, I think we talked about this with him, about the office holders being able to, if they don't spend all their money, but, we got this crazy, if you don't spend it, you lose it idea, and it just creates maybe not the right atmosphere. We want to try to encourage our people to work and save money if they can, and they don't get punished by having it taken away from them if they've worked hard to save it. So that sounds good to me. The other question I have is on D, the 911, isn't that in association with the city?
Yes, and in fact, it's still an open concern right now. They're not quite done with it. Before we can defease it, the project has to actually have been finished. So that's still a ways off being able to defease
And the
that.
city would have to agree to that too.
I believe so. We'd have to work out but this is our debt this is not the combined debt. This is the county's debt, so we could defease that.
The 2015 issue is strictly the county.
Yeah.
So in terms of the project side, I think you're correct. Those decisions have to be jointly, but on the debt side, it would be a county decision.
We'd communicate with the city about our plan, but I think we could do that. Beyond the savings on interest, and I've talked about this with Amy, I think the real benefit to the jail is being able to take this money out of the jail's substantial reserve, defease it, take the debt off our books and her books, and the money that the jail pays annually on the installments would go back into her budget. And it's not an insubstantial amount of money. It's $198,000 a year that they make payments on, and that money could go back in her budget for raises, for pension increases, for all those things. That's the real benefit, I would say, and in addition to these savings. So, and I hope everybody gets that. We're by defeasing an amount, we are locking it away, untouchable by us.
That would also help our bond ratings, too.
Yes.
Well, I think that's and I got a slide in here kind of addressing that very good leading question, page 11 there. We did some quick analysis. There's two components that are kind of the driver here. Obviously, you pay down your debt. That would help reduce your debt burden, which would reduce or help improve your credit rating. On the flip side, having sufficient cash and liquidity is also a metric that's a very strong driver of credit rating. So the key here is to make sure that you maintain a sufficient amount of liquidity regardless of what you do. And we didn't run the analysis for you because we weren't sure what where you were in terms of how much or what you were looking at. But we did run on page 11 kind of a snapshot of what your rating metrics look like based upon last fiscal audit versus last Department of Local Government information, and things were trending nicely. So I think that to generally answer your question, I think it's probably correct.
Yeah. And in consulting with Jailer Brady, for now, we're focusing on this oldest of her bonds, the 2012 bond, and perhaps work with her in the future to maybe figure out a way to methodically take care of all the jail's bonds so that they would be debt-free, being able to take all this money that they pay each year in payments and interest and getting it back into her budget. That's for the future, but right now, through an agreement with Jailer Brady, we want to focus on this 2012 bond. We don't have to vote on that today, but I did want to bring Mr. Brock up here to explain this and keep this information for perhaps future actions, and see if anybody has any questions. If you're done saying what you'd like to say or walking us through.
Hopefully we covered the general process. I mean, obviously, if there's any specific questions, I mean, it's kind of a math equation in a lot of ways in terms of making sure that once this money is set aside, that it's irrevocable, so you can't use it for other purposes. So there's that opportunity cost there. And then it's a factor of, when the bonds are callable in terms of, and then what that investment yield is, versus what you may otherwise be seeing today.
And to refer back to page 8, I'm sorry, did I interrupt?
No, you're fine.
Page 8 are basically the steps we'd have to go through to get this done.
That's correct.
And so if you want to review those, take the time, please, and hopefully in the near future, I know our next payment of interest and capital principal is in June, so we need to make a decision to do this for June if we wanted to take care of this year. So we'll be revisiting this, and I appreciate you coming up. Any other questions of Mr. Brock?
What happens if it yields more than the .001?
I'm sorry. Oh, you mean we basically wouldn't let that
Just
occur?
not,
Yeah,
okay.
we would match it and maximize the return. Yeah.
I was talking to Lonnie and Keith before the session, and if we set aside enough money to pay this out through the natural maturity date, the written maturity date, but then in 2022 decided to pay it off early, there may be a little bit of money left over in that account, and that money would all go back to the jail.
Is that an IRS ruling or is that statutory?
No, it's a tax law issue, and it's something we would rely on bond counsel to opine on in terms of the yield calculations. But generally, you're going to be restricted on that. That's correct.
What I'm thinking is maybe we should talk to our congressman about this. Maybe the counties and cities should be exempt from that, because right now we're in a really nice. We've got old bonds, interest rates have gone up, and we could actually make money if we were in the right position. So.
Well, I think that's technically correct, and I guess my response would be that you can't dedicate monies to legally defease it. That's where you get into that scenario. In other words, if you just kept it over here, it would be a separate discussion. You wouldn't be limited.
You all can hold on to it, or the whoever the trustee is can hold on to it until the thing's over with, and then whatever money's left, give it back to the county. That's
I'll let you take it up with Jamie Comer and we'll see how that goes. If there aren't any more questions, I really appreciate you coming up.
No,
I
thank
wanted
you.
to ask Lonnie a question real quick.
That's why I brought them.
Awesome. Fantastic.
I thought it was just your drive. I didn't know.
Lonnie, remind me, does CAECO have a team that would help counties with some financial projection if we wanted to do a little projecting to see about cash flows and things like this related to defeasance and other matters? Does CAECO have a little team that could help us do that?
We do. Of course, I worked in the Department for Local Government for a lot of years, and they have a team over there too, but I'd be glad to come down and provide any assistance we can for you.
We may have some things we want to project out and see just to help us make the decisions on any future bonds or any other
Sure.
choices we make.
Yeah.
So I'll be in touch.
Okay, and just to clarify, just so you all know, CAECO has a relationship with Compass. That's why they are actually our financial advisors. So I travel with Keith quite often. They do most of our long-term issues, our bonds and defeasance and things like that. So if you have any complaint of Keith, come to CAECO, because CAECO is the one that is in partnership with him. So.
And one of the things I like about Compass is defeasance doesn't necessarily benefit Compass in many ways. Taking out bonds really benefits Compass.
Right.
They sell bonds, but they're professional and they understand what counties need to do, and sometimes they need to do these things. So I appreciate you being magnanimous and helping us out. And we will be back in touch about
All
this.
right. Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Thank you all.
And I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, did Jailer Brady have any questions about this? And if you do, please be sure to get with Lonnie or Keith. Okay, thank you. The next item on your list is a quick bit of business. At the Sandy Lee Watkins Park, we have about 200 acres that we lease out for farming. David Baird has
We don't lease
farmed
it out, Judge. We license the row crop farming on it.
License. Worry about it. David Baird has farmed that ground under our license for the last 4 years. It's time to bid it again, and we are preparing a notice to bid. And I just wanted to get everybody's approval that we can go ahead and bid this. It'll be a 4-year license. Won't go beyond your term of service. We're going to be, asking for open bids per acre, price per acre. In this instance, because of the agreement between Hugh McCormick, former Judge Hugh McCormick, and Mr. Baird will have right of first refusal this first go-round. So he will be able to match the high bid if he so chooses and retain the license.
This is a cash crop, or is cash per acre? Okay.
Yeah, price per acre. And
what has it been?
it was a very low rate. It was a graduated scale. I think it went from 15 up to, it ended at 18. Very low.
$18 an acre?
The original agreement was that Mr. Baird was going to swap with the county some ground that perhaps might be developed into a county park, a new county park. The county decided not to do that for various reasons, but we wanted to honor the agreement with Mr. Baird and let him continue to farm it. I would project that the new bid will yield much more than that. Yeah.
Make a motion to approve the bidding process.
A second.
Motion and a second. Any other questions? Mr. Hubeck is with us in case you had any questions about the park or what we're doing. All those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Bill. We will get the notice of bids out. And now, but you can stay right up there, we're going to open some of the other bids that were, he's going to make a recommendation on some of the bids that were open in the last fiscal court meeting, and Bill, I'll let you take it from there.
You should have in front of you a little packet with the analysis of the bids that we opened last week or last court for materials. I'm going to start off with the first one was our N12 pipe. This is the plastic pipe that we use exclusively for drainage pipe in Henderson County, from size of all the way down to 4-inch all the way up to 60-inch pipe. So the successful bidder was Ohio Valley Drainage. They were the successful bidder last year. There is a slight increase in some of the pipe and the couplers, so we will be reviewing the county installation prices that go along with this. The county puts in all drainage pipe underneath driveways on county roads. We only charge for the materials. The installation charge is not done. There is just a charge for the materials, which include the pipe and the rock. So we will be reviewing what the charges are per foot this year, probably have a recommendation to change them slightly. So, any question on the N12 pipe?
You want to vote on each of these, Mr. Gold, or shall we wait till the end, do you think?
I think as long as there's not controversy, we can vote.
Okay.
Okay.
You're recommending Ohio Valley Drainage, and we'll move on to the next one.
Correct. The second one is the bituminous asphalt. You'll have it right here. You'll have all the bidders. We had E&B Paving, J.H. Rudolph, Rogers Group, and Road Builders. Henderson County on our overlays of our road uses the hot mix binder. The only time that we use surface is if we're in a subdivision which calls for surface type material to be used, and we use base material when we're coming up with a brand new road that's being done. And so, according to this, a successful bidder for hot mix binder base material on the shoulder is J.H. Rudolph. Should we decide to put down any surface mix, it would be done by Road Builders.
I searched it, it says Rogers.
Do what? That's what I just said. Rogers Group.
No, you said J.H. Rudolph.
I'm sorry. Rogers Group for the hot mix binder, base, and shoulder, and Road Builders for the surface. Chip and seal, we only had one bid, and that was by J.H. Rudolph, so that would be the bid that we accept should we decide to do any chip and seal. Concrete, we only had one bid this year, and that was from Moit Concrete. They are the successful bidder. Their prices stayed the same as they were last year. Crushed limestone. You'll need to look at this one. If we go FOB, which is freight on board picked up here in Henderson County, the Mulser yard is down by the Riverport. Unfortunately, the Rogers Group is all the way out in Marion. So if we pick up the rock, it's much more economical to get it here in Henderson County than go down to Marion and Crittenden County. So my recommendation, the FOB would be picked up at Mulser Yard. And should we have any delivered, it would be by the Rogers Group.
Is that with the exception of the sand fill?
Do what?
Is that with the exception of the sand fill?
Yes.
Does the Rogers Group have a yard right outside of Morganfield? Is that not Rogers Group?
No. They have a small yard there just for their own purposes or local area right there. But they won't, we can't pick it up there. This is FOB at their quarry.
Okay.
Unfortunately. And the last bid is under review still, the Ohio Drive one. There was some verbiage potentially that might have been left out of the bid. We're going to review that with the state and EDA, and that might have to be rebid. Of course, we're not ready to put any asphalt down on Ohio Drive at this point anyway. But
So we're going to hold on to that one?
we're going to hold on to that one until we have the review.
So nothing on
The what?
nothing on this page?
No, not on the Ohio Drive one. That's exclusively for Ohio Drive. Yeah, we're going to hold on that. Yes. The regular one.
It says bituminous asphalt. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions of Mr. Hubiak on these bids?
These are all the material bids. If you take some action on it, and then I'll move on to the rest.
Approve the bids as he's recommended.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions on this? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Moving on.
Okay, only had one bid on the cleaning services for both the Judicial Center and the Henderson County Courthouse, and that was France. And that would be my recommendation. That's the company that is currently doing it. It would be my recommendation to accept that bid.
Can you give us any characterization of how their new bid compares to their old prices last year?
It looks basically the same to me from what we had last year.
Okay.
And we did write these with on this thing, with a option that if they keep the price the same, that it can be renewed instead of having to be bid out every year. So for the next 4 years, 1 year at a time.
We can also reverse that decision if we want to.
That is correct.
Okay. And France is basically, honestly, the only company region that bids on this for us. So, can I entertain a motion to accept France as the maintenance vendor for the courthouse and the Judicial Center?
I move.
Motion
Yes.
and a second.
Second.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any other questions on that? Comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
And the last and final bid was for the HVAC for both the Henderson County Judicial Center and the courthouse. We only received one bid this year. It was from J.E. Shekel. They have been a successful bidder in the past. There have been no changes, basically, in their pricing for their maintenance of the either building. And it would be my recommendation that we award them the HVAC contract. And these two have the same thing where we can extend it on without having to rebid it or cancel it at such time.
And they've done a pretty good job for us, have they not?
That they have.
Any other questions about that? Get a motion to accept that bid.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank
Thank you, Bill. The next item in your packet was a agreement between KYTC and the county on payments and work regarding Cairo Hickory Grove Road. On Friday, Mr. Gold found a clause in that agreement that he has several times over the last years voiced an objection to and contacted KYTC to have it struck, and we are still waiting on KYTC to get back to us about that. It hasn't been a problem in the past. We just couldn't get it back in time to get it in this meeting, so I'm going to ask that we postpone it. Anything you'd like to add to that, Mr. Gold?
No, just, we've been down the road with them before, and they actually found the phrase in there some time ago, but the last communication with them was Friday, and they promised to get back to me, but they have not yet. But yesterday was a holiday.
Yeah, a little tough. Mr. Hubiact, is if we postpone this one meeting in order to get the agreement situated like we wanted, is that going to impede your progress too much?
No, sir.
Okay. So with the court's forbearance, I'd like to postpone that to next meeting. Next in your packet is the annual agreement we have with the City County Rescue Squad, acknowledging their service to both the city and the county. This is the county's portion of that agreement, and it spells out their range of services and responsibilities. This is something we do with the City County Rescue Squad every year. We appreciate their work, and it's obviously a benefit to both our volunteer fire departments and all the other first responding groups in the county. So, any questions about this? Again, it's an annual renewal of an agreement we have. Chief Wooders, would you like to come up and say anything? Is that a no? Gotcha. I think I described the agreement accurately. If you don't mind, I'd like the fiscal court clerk to read the resolution, just the summary at the top, and I think that's sufficient unless you have any questions about any of the other sections of the resolution. And again, I want to point out that in our VFD funding plan that we passed a couple years ago now, the City County Rescue Squad was included in that agreement, and volunteer fire departments pay up to 10% of the revenue that they receive from that plan to City County Rescue to help fund their activities, and I think that's worked out well, Chief, if I don't say so myself. So I think they're in good shape and able to do the work that they're required to do. So I'd like the clerk to read the summary at the top of this resolution, please.
Resolution authorizing County Judge Executive to execute statement of affiliation between the Henderson City County Rescue Squad, City of Henderson, and Henderson Emergency Management Agency.
We had a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Volunteer service, by the way, I should point that out. At the last second, Mr. Gold had a copier come up that could be declared surplus, so we have a resolution, as is required, packet to declare that copier surplus and be sold at auction. Well, we do have to pass a resolution to do that.
And this is a copier that we purchased with bad check and delinquent tax fees that came to our office that did not run through fiscal court. These were office funds, and what we're asking for is this to be declared surplus and for the proceeds to go back into our office operating funds.
And if it pleases the court, I'd like the clerk just to read the summary of that too, instead of having to go through all that. But it's a single copier, correct? Just putting it out there for.
It's a linear copier with a finisher. We purchased a new one. This one was been around around 10 years or so, and we got one about half the price and half the size. So the technology has moved forward quite a bit, but it still works, and somebody might be able to use it.
So if you read the summary, please.
Yep. A resolution declaring certain county property to be surplus and providing for the disposition thereof.
So moved to approve.
You have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. For the next item on the list, I'd like Chris Hobgood and our Airport Executive Director, Alan Bennett. And I think we have the Chairman of the Board of the Airport, Dick Wam, with us. If you don't mind coming up here, Dick. And Alan, we have an important decision to make. With a little bit of background, I'd like to ask Chris Hobgood, who acts as both a member of the board and the airport's attorney, to kind of brief us on this situation, its history, and where we find ourselves now.
Thank you, Judge. My name is Chris Hopgood, and I'm the attorney for the airport board. The Henderson City County Airport is managed by a board, but the land is actually owned half by the city and half by the county. The airport currently has a runway that's 5,502 feet in length. The Federal Aviation Administration, which funds airports and general aviation airports as well as commercial airports, has determined that our runway needs to be shifted 606 feet west due to the proximity of the eastern side being close to Highway 136. As you drive to the airport, that's the part that from Henderson you come to first. You notice the runway is fairly close to Highway 136. In order to achieve that, then 606 feet of runway needs to be taken up on the east and placed 604 feet on the west. In order to accomplish that, the FAA and the Kentucky Department of Aviation funded 95% of the land to the west of us needed for the addition of 604 feet and 1,000 feet in the future for the runway proper. That is, for the asphalt of the runway to take it out west 1,604 feet. We've purchased that property by agreement with the neighbors, the Dawsets. However, the full 1,604-foot extension, in order to be completed, requires that we need a runway safety area to the west. That property is on the Williams family. That's immediately west of the Dawsets. We need 4.535 acres of their property to square off a runway safety area. That property must be owned by the city and the county as with all other airport property. In addition, Trigg Turner Road would run right through the runway extended, so it has to be relocated and has to go west. That is the most cost-efficient way to relocate Trigg Turner Road, and we've looked at that avenue of how to handle Trigg Turner Road. It's got to be there for 911 reasons. We can't just abandon it. And that road relocation would then cut west through the Williams property and the Sauer property. The road would require an additional 2.533 acres of road from the Williamses. Outside the runway safety area, which is owned by the airport, the neighbor owns the land, but the FAA requires that the neighbor give us an avigation easement. And that is an easement where the neighbor still owns the property, still farms the property, but they cannot build a structure higher than 8 feet on the land. As I said, the land can be farmed, it just can't be built on. And there's a payment for that that's a significant portion of the whole value of the property, and the landowner retains it. That avigation easement on the Williams is 16.381 acres. Finally, there's a Big Rivers transmission line that would run too close to the runway extended, and it's got to be sent out on a U pattern around the airport. And on the Williams family, that would involve 6.674 acres. There are other landowners involved. There's the Sauer family west of the Dawsets. John and Pat Davis are to the south of this that would be affected by Trigg Turner Road, and then Heath and Melody Green are the farthest west, and their property would be affected by the road relocation and the transmission line relocation. The road relocation on the Greens is 1.882 acres. The transmission line is 2.675 acres. We have had the property appraised. The appraised value we feel is very well representative of the fair value of the property. The Williamses and the Greens have rejected the offers to purchase the property and the necessary easements based on appraised values. I believe at this time that we can come to an agreement with the Sauers, the Dawsets, and John and Pat Davis. However, we've been unable to come to an agreement with the Williamses and the Greens. So I'm asking for a resolution authorizing eminent domain proceedings against the Williams family and Heath and Melody Green. The action will be filed in the name of the county for the benefit of the airport and its owners. We've negotiated in good faith, which is our requirement. We've looked at every possible design modification, and we have actually modified the design somewhat on the Greens in order to minimize the effect of the road relocation on their property. Now, it's my belief that the FAA will authorize an additional amount over and above fair market value in order to avoid eminent domain proceedings. I don't have that figure yet. When I get that figure, we're going to offer that, and if that offer is rejected, then we have no choice but to move forward. But I'm requesting the authority now. No one relishes the concept of eminent domain. Probably every family in this area has been felt by it in some point in time. We would prefer voluntary agreements. But if we don't move forward with the project, we stand the prospect of having to return well over $2 million to the Federal Aviation Administration, and the county's share of that is half. If the runway were reduced to 4,900 feet, which is required, it would jeopardize all 50 jobs that the airport supports. And as many of you know, the airport is our gateway to economic development. It's the first impression of Henderson that industry sees when they fly in. For existing and future jobs, then we're asking for the resolution to proceed with eminent domain as to the Williams and the Green properties. Alan Bennett is here. Dick Wam is the chairman of the airport board. Kimber Heddens is our secretary. He's here. Also, Garver Engineering is our engineer, and Ryan Sizemore and Zach Simpson. Zach is has worked diligently through this, and he's here as well to answer any questions you've got about the project.
I do have a couple questions, and just to clarify as well. We are required, the airport is required to take this action to satisfy the FAA. This is not something we're doing just because we want to. The FAA is requiring us to take this action.
That is correct.
If we chose not to invoke eminent domain to get this done at the FAA's request, we would be in jeopardy of having to repay, along with the city, well over $2 million, and the county's portion of that would be well over $1 million.
That's correct.
We have negotiated for close to a year, if I'm not mistaken,
Well over that.
to try to get this done. And as you said, nobody is happy about having to get this far and invoke eminent domain. But in my view, and I want to know if you share this view, Mr. Bennett, we have no choice. We have no choice unless we want to each repay well over $1 million to the FAA.
I think backing up would be a much more expensive option, as well as the loss of community asset in the airport. We have an airport that's very active. We have an FBO that manages about a dozen charter jets there. There are jobs associated with all of that, and we just finished $1.8 million worth of ramp renovation. We're looking at another state grant for $680,000 in order for us to stay viable and maintain our position as a regional airport, which we got that designation about 2 years ago when the FAA went through all of their inventory of airports, and the haves and the have-nots basically were those. And then when we got on the regional list and they looked at us, they said, "You're deficient."
For the reasons we mentioned, the runway was too close to 136. And to reiterate, the jobs at the airport and the ability of the airport to function as it does now is threatened by the fact that even if we refuse to acquire this ground, they would still require the airport to shave 600 feet off the east end, regardless, which would reduce the length of the runway to approximately 4,900 feet, which is not sufficient to keep either Don Davis Aviation or Ron Collins Aviation in business at the airport. They would, for all intents and purposes, have to leave our airport. In addition, it would curtail the type of aircraft that could land there, and which would also be a detriment.
That is correct.
After many years of developing the airport to get it to this point.
Since the 60s.
Yeah. So, again, in my view, we really have no choice here. Mr. Hobgood, if you could elaborate a little on the fact that you're requesting us to do today is not the final decision on eminent domain when it comes to the airport. There's steps to take after this that gives both the Williams and the Greens family a chance to plead their case and explain why they don't think eminent domain is required, correct?
That is correct. You're giving me the resolution that's necessary in order to file a petition. Once the petition is filed, the landowners can object and say you don't have the right to conduct eminent domain. That hearing would be held across the street in circuit court before the Henderson Circuit Court. So there is that opportunity for the landowners to contest that.
So both the Williams and the Greens will have a chance in front of a neutral body appointed by the court across the street to argue their case, explain why they think it's unnecessary, and they could win.
That's absolutely true.
But we must take this step to satisfy FAA requirements.
That is correct.
I just want to make sure everybody understands that.
And
So,
even if we're successful in getting the eminent domain, the families still have a jury trial to discuss the value. So
Right.
they're not obligated to take our value, but we've got to be able to move forward.
so the price could still be negotiated in their favor.
That's correct.
In their favor.
Or determined by a jury.
Yeah.
Chris, I have one question. So you can still negotiate with the families even after today if we enact this resolution?
That is correct.
That don't stop any negotiations on your part?
It does not, and we had hoped to have the authority, additional authority over and above the appraised value by last week. We don't have it yet. So certainly I'm not going to run across the street and file that if there's some more money that might solve the problem. I don't know that it will, but we're not going to do that until I can tell both of these families that we've gotten every dime that the federal government will authorize for this project.
Okay.
On the Trigg Turner Road movement, that is included, the cost of that is included in the FAA grant, correct?
I believe that is correct. I'll defer to Zach. Says it's yes, so I'll defer to the yes.
Correct. And am I also correct in saying everything was done to minimize the impact of that road design on the families whose property it will cross? In fact, I think we made concerted strides to run the portion that goes north and south as it heads towards 136 to straddle the property lines to, again, minimize the impact. You said the amount of acreage needed to lay down Trigg Turner Road in its new configuration total was only about 4 acres or so in total, 4 or 5 acres.
It's 2 acres on the greens, and I can give you the exact figure on the Williamses. The road on the Williamses is 2.533.
So a little over.
2.5 acres on the Williamses, a little less than 2 acres on the green.
And which they'll be paid for.
Correct.
If
and
they,
they'll
if
have
they.
a county road fronting on both sides of their property.
And this is just speculation on my part, but I've heard it from other parties. Having a county road fronting your property potentially in the future increases the value of your property in case you want to use it for other purposes. I know that you can't offer your opinion on that, I don't think, but I think
it lends itself to development. I mean, that's obviously, in order to have a residence, you've got to have a road to a residence, and that opens up possibilities for landowners.
If we vote this today and it doesn't go to eminent domain, will we still be responsible to pay back to the FAA, or does that relieve us at that time?
I don't know the complete answer to that question, but I don't know what more we could have done. If we go to eminent domain and the court would say, no, you don't have that right, we'll have to turn to the FAA and say they didn't authorize. So now what do we do?
And is your question, if the families decide to settle, that ends it? Is that also what you, this ends the eminent domain proceeding as well?
No, I'm saying if the court doesn't allow it to go to eminent domain, are we still responsible to pay back the $1.3 million?
Gotcha. And was that answered to your satisfaction?
The only problem I've got with that is I don't know that's ever happened before. So airports are pretty fundamental public projects, and eminent domain requires a public project. So as Mr. Gold will tell you, it's our job to sit around and think of weird things that could happen. I don't know that there's a case out there where that's ever happened before. So I can tell you this, that if we do that, we've done all we can do.
Chris, first of all, thank you for your work in preparing the resolutions that we have for us today. The Eminent Domain Act does require certain things to be done prior to any sort of filing of suit. Can you certify that the airport board has taken all those steps necessary under that act?
We have had the property appraised, had the appraisal reviewed by another appraiser, and the families had all been offered the appraised value for the properties. And the obligation is to negotiate in good faith. We've made some modification to the design for the greens, and I don't know what more we could have done now other than what we've done, which is to offer based on the appraisals that we got.
Thank you.
Besides Collins as aviation and your all's airport, who else uses the airport?
There is a company out of Texas, what's the name of the fellow from Elevated Lift or something like that?
The helicopter company.
Yeah, the helicopter. Now, I don't know that this would affect him because he doesn't need vertical. He doesn't need a horizontal runway. He goes up. Who else we got out there? And we got a lot of folks that rent hangars from us.
Well, Scott Miller is probably one of the larger employers.
Scott Industries,
yeah.
yeah.
He has his corporate office here, but he has locations all over the United States and flies in and out on a regular basis.
Bernie Hogan has IWT, which located right next to the airport, and it's got to be because of the airport, obviously.
He located where he did because of the airport,
Right.
yeah.
Bernie's got about 4 planes, and he's flying out this morning. These businesses are dependent on our airport.
Does Brentag still use it?
Brentag, they have charter service that they utilize out of our airport.
Because I think Ray Preston.
He was instrumental.
He was the one that was the PB&S Chemical was the predecessor, and he used that, and I think that's why they located there out at the Riverport.
And they have, at one time, I think they had their own plane. They now just charter, but
Eastern Alloys is a big user of the airport. Their corporate guys are always in and out.
So for economic development, this is essential.
I think so. I mean, if you had to fly into Owensboro or Evansville to go look at property in Henderson, are you going to come here? I mean, that's a rhetorical question, but the answer is no.
So I think I've tried to make the fact clear that we really have no choice. Tonight, I think you'll be asking the city to consider this as well. We've consulted with the city. They have sent representatives to board meetings where attempts to negotiate were thrown out there and rejected. So I think we've just reached the end of this on our part and turn it over to the eminent domain proceeding from this point forward. At least that's what I feel. If anybody has any comments they'd like to make about that. Again, this is not something we want to do. I just feel like we have to. So with that, I'll ask the clerk to read the first eminent domain proceeding, which would be regarding the Williams family property.
Resolution authorizing institution of proceeding under Eminent Domain Act of Kentucky against Mary Janet Williams, Joanne Williams, Patricia Cucino, and Brent R. Cucino, co-trustees of the Patrick L. Cucino Revocable Trust, dated March 17, 2005, Williams family, located adjacent to the Henderson City County Airport, parcel number 32-16. Whereas Henderson County owns an undivided 1/2 interest in the real estate on which the Henderson City County Airport is situated. Whereas Henderson County and the City of Henderson, the other real estate owner of the airport property, constitute the Henderson City County Airport Board pursuant to KRS 183.132 to manage the operation of the airport. Whereas the Federal Aviation Administration has directed that 600 feet of the easternmost portion of the runway be removed for runway safety, and that this 600 feet be added to the western portion of the existing runway. Whereas the Federal Aviation Administration has authorized an additional runway extension of 1,000 feet that will result in the Henderson City County Airport having a runway of 6,500 feet. Whereas Henderson City County Airport has requested approval of the extension of its runway to 6,500 feet in order to maintain the viability of the airport as general aviation runway and in order to retain the approximately 50 direct jobs that the airport facility supports. Whereas the extension of the runway requires the county to relocate Trigg Turner Road and necessitates the acquisition of 7.08 acres of land in fee simple from the Williams family for runway safety area and road relocation, as shown in Exhibits A, B, and C. 6.675 acres for a transmission line easement, is Exhibit D, and 16.3 acres for aviation easement, which is Exhibit E. Whereas the Henderson City County Airport Board has made a good faith offer to the Williams family to purchase the foregoing interest, but the offer has been rejected. Whereas the runway extension project does not proceed, the Henderson City County Airport is subject to repayment in excess of $1 million to the Federal Aviation Administration for funds already granted for the runway extension project. And whereas the City County Airport Board has requested that the Fiscal Court in the City of Henderson authorize an eminent domain action in the name of Henderson County for the benefit of the Henderson City County Airport. Now therefore be it resolved by the Henderson Fiscal Court that eminent domain or condemnation proceedings be instituted for the acquisition by Henderson County of the properties referenced in Exhibits A, B, and C hereto for the benefit of Henderson City County Airport Board and its owners, and the Airport Board attorney is authorized and directed to proceed with and take all necessary actions for the legal condemnation of said property under the Eminent Domain Act of Kentucky and all applicable laws.
Can I get a motion to approve that resolution? In fact, I will make the motion to approve that resolution. Can I get a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second Any other questions, comments, or thoughts?
Chris, if you have the aviation right of way to go over the property, is there any chance you might ever need that property in the future?
The navigation easement, it would require us to have to go longer than 6,500 feet. In other words, west of us. The only time we would have to acquire that in fee simple or complete ownership would be if we extended the runway even farther west. And I don't want to.
Is that a possibility?
Is it standards change, things change. I don't want to.
Well, my point is, I don't want to fight this fight again.
agree.
If we're going to have to go through condemnation, let's just go ahead and get the whole thing and be done with
Well,
it.
and I understand. The indication has been that this is it for us. Again, standards change over time.
Okay.
But that's what Cynthia at the FAA has said, that this is where they want us to be at 6,500 feet. So,
Chris, does this affect any residences? No. Farmland only?
no. It is the closest, the residences outside the areas, but in terms of the actual taking, there are no residences involved.
So if we move it to 660 feet or 600 feet and don't add the 1,000 feet, then we're not in compliance?
No. The 6,500 is what they want us to get to. And this is not going to happen all at once. They fund you millions of dollars at a time, but not all at once for the entire project. So the 600 feet will happen in the next handful of years. The 1,000 will follow after that. But if we get the 600 back, at least that's where we are now. But again, they want us, as Alan said, to be a regional airport. They want us at 6,500.
So that's a requirement from the FAA?
Yes, to be where we are now. I'm sorry, as the regional airport, to be that designation.
Any other thoughts? Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Magistrate McCollum?
Aye.
Magistrate Berry?
Aye.
Magistrate Moran?
Aye.
Magistrate Southard?
Aye.
Judge Schneider?
Aye. We have a second proceeding that I'd like to read. This is concerning the Green property, and with that, I'll have Mr. Clerk do that.
Mr. Green is here. Mr. Green is here.
We'll give you a chance. So if you please read that.
Resolution authorizing institution of proceeding under Eminent Domain Act of Kentucky against Randall Heath Green and Melody J. Greens, located adjacent to the Henderson City County Airport, parcel number 32-12. Whereas the Henderson County owns an undivided one-half interest in real estate on which Henderson City County Airport is situated, whereas Henderson County and the City of Henderson, another real estate owner of the airport property, constitute the Henderson City County Airport Board pursuant to KRS 183.132 to manage the operation of the airport, whereas the Federal Aviation Administration has directed that 600 feet of the easternmost portion of the runway be removed for runway safety, and that this 600 feet be added to the western portion of the existing runway, whereas the Federal Aviation Administration has authorized an additional runway extension of 1,000 feet that will result in the Henderson City County Airport having a runway of 6,500 feet. Whereas the Henderson City County Airport has requested the approval of the extension of its runway to 6,500 feet in order to maintain the viability of the airport as general aviation runway and in order to retain the approximately 50 director jobs that the airport facility supports. Whereas the extension of the runway requires the county to relocate Trigg Turner Road and necessitates the acquisition of 1.882 acres of land in fee simple from the Greens for road relocation, shown in Exhibit A, and 2.675 acres for transmission line easement, Exhibit B. Whereas the Henderson City County Airport Board has made a good faith offer to the Greens to purchase foregoing interests, but the offer has been rejected. Whereas if the runway extension project does not proceed, the Henderson City County Airport is subject to repayment in excess of $1 million to the Federal Aviation Administration for funds already granted for the runway extension project. And whereas the Henderson City County Airport Board has requested that the fiscal court in the city of Henderson authorize an eminent domain action in the name of Henderson County for the benefit of the Henderson City County Airport. Now therefore be it resolved by the Henderson Fiscal Court that eminent domain or condemnation proceedings be instituted for acquisition by the Henderson County of properties by the Henderson County of the properties referenced in Exhibits A and B hereto for the benefit of Henderson City County Airport Board and its owners, and the Airport Board attorney is authorized and directed to proceed with and take all necessary action for the legal condemnation of said property under the Eminent Domain Act of Kentucky and all applicable laws.
Before we move, I'd like to ask a representative of the Green family if they'd like to come up and speak.
I'm Heath, not Smelly, my wife. I thought you had told us you wouldn't do eminent domain on us.
I don't think I ever said that.
I think you did in the church. You said there would result of that, and then I've contacted you at least 2 or 3 times to negotiate. And the last time I talked to you 2 months ago, you didn't know nothing about anything.
I don't think I said that we would not be
think
eminent
you did.
domain. I think we wanted to negotiate.
Well,
And
Mr. Bennett come down there and made an offer before, and it was nowhere near what y'all offered us. So how come we're not even close to that?
Mr. Hobgood, would you like to speak to this?
I don't know what the offer that you're talking about was, so can you elaborate on that?
Well, he said that, never any money is pocket change, like coins in an ashtray, no problem. We'll make it right. We wanted to build a house, we was going to put a road in the first place.
Sure.
So, we moved to town. We bought a house.
Sure, I understand. And
He made an offer. If he's not man enough to stand up to that offer, he should be making offers to people. I got a problem with that.
understood. Those certainly aren't the words I would have used, but the offer is based upon the appraisal, which is $12,000 an acre for the ground, and then about I think $9,000 for the transmission line. So it's based on appraised value, and again, if we get additional authority, we're going to contact you and offer that before we file it.
I think if it's my property, I need to tell you what I want for it.
Well, and you've got that opportunity. You've got that opportunity.
I mean, that's how we feel about it.
Sure, I understand. Nobody wants to do this.
And I know we can't fight y'all. We can't fight them and domain.
And unfortunately with land,
even when I told you all you come to my house, I can't fight this.
Unfortunately with land, you can't get damages like you could if you were injured in an accident or something. You get the value of your.
But you're taking income away from us. So if you figure out what that 2 acres is worth us and divide it by what my time is for all my life, that's money on the table. That's the income for my wife and my kids.
Sure.
I want that money.
And I'd have to defer to the appraiser on that. That's how they value stuff, is they take into account what's the value of the land, what can the land do, what's its highest and best use. And if you've got an appraisal that's different, we'll take that to the FAA. But I realize, that's causing you to also to have to spend money. And we've got an appraiser that's given us an appraisal, and if we get additional money, which I'm really hopeful that we will because of all the inconvenience, then we're going to offer that to you and give you that opportunity to say yea or nay.
All right.
Thank you. Any other questions? Motion to approve this resolution? And I'll make that motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? I'd like to say again, we didn't want to be here. We are in a lose-lose situation with this, and we are trying to do everything we can to protect the airport, be fair with the families involved, and protect the taxpayers of the county as well. So we did not want to have to get to this point, but it is what it is, and again, it is not the final decision in this case. There will be other chances for both the Green family and the Williams family to argue in front of a neutral body their wishes, their thoughts, and their preferences. So, but at least to move the process down the road we had to go, to this.
Brad,
So-
can I ask one more question? Chris, have you all talked about like exchanges?
We have, it's a little hard, like for the greens, there's a little less than 2 acres for the road and a little over 2 acres for the transmission line, which they still own though. You can farm under the transmission line. I realize you got to plow around poles, but it's a little hard to do an exchange on when it's smaller like that. We were able to do that with the Dawsets because there was a fairly large chunk of land taken. With the Williamses, we've explored some options with that, but again, it's kind of hard to find people that want to sell and get in the right amount of acreage that's close to them. Is the hard part. The Dawsets farmed in 2 different parts of the county, and that worked out well for us because we could acquire land where they wanted to be, not near the airport, and we were able to swap with them. So
Okay. At least you looked at it.
we have looked at it, and I've looked at this thing from 6 ways to Sunday, trying to figure out how to avoid doing it. Looking at neighbors' land, trying to ask every time anybody asks me a question, could the road go this way? Could we do this? Can we modify this? And I asked the engineers, their obligation is to do it for the most efficient way. And so there are other ways to do it, but they're not price-wise viable with the FAA.
Thank you.
Chris, I know one of the issues that came up here is that the grant was awarded prior to acquisition of the property. And I know there have been discussions with the airport board about not doing that in the future, making sure that any property acquisition was taken care of prior to the application for grants that would require property.
Correct.
Can you
That's
speak
correct.
to that?
Yes. There were, when we acquired the Dawset property, that is all the property we need and a little more for the actual asphalt of the runway. Unfortunately, the design isn't done until after you acquire that. And the design showed that we need, and I've got a map if anyone wants to see it, but the runway safety area extends past the runway. It gets into the Williams property, and to corner it off, it requires about 4 acres of their property. That was unforeseen. Trigg Turner Road is going to be relocated either way. And the avigation easement, frankly, I don't think any of us foresaw the problems that we were going to encounter with the landowners on transmission, avigation easement, and road relocation. But road relocation has been a big deal with the Williamses, and we understand that. There's just no other way. We can't abandon Trigg Turner Road. We can't take it east. It's got to go west, and unfortunately it cuts through their property. But that was certainly foreseeable at the time. But in terms of needing all the land that we needed when this grant was done, the only thing we didn't foresee was the 4-acre triangle that's on the Williamses, and that resulted from the design.
I'll end the discussion by saying anytime the county or the state improves public infrastructure, we encounter these types of challenges. I would say that the farms in question are located along Kentucky 136, which did not always exist. They are able to be farmed now easily and have value partially because of the existence of Kentucky 136. Land had to be acquired at some point to build Kentucky 136 and provide value and safe passage and connection from communities like Geneva and Smith Mills back to Henderson. Public infrastructure is important. The people who live on 136 now benefited from these tough negotiations years and years ago when the prospect of building Kentucky 136 was brought. Anytime public infrastructure involves crossing somebody's private ground, it is very difficult. But in the end, I would argue that Kentucky 136 was a huge net benefit to the county and the farming community in the west end of the county. And I would also argue that maintaining a viable and FAA-approved airport is also very important to our community. And even though it's tough, it's something that needs to be done, or at least given both the county and the families involved a chance to argue their case in front of neutral court. So with that, we have a motion and a second. Yes, Ken?
Chris, I think I'm clear, but you said that as far as the FAA goes, in regards to the offer that the families have, the Greens and people, there may be another offer, maybe more
Yes,
money.
Right. They typically offer an administrative settlement. That is, they don't want us to have to do this. So they'll pay, if we can justify it, and I've given some reasons to justify larger than fair market value, then if they grant that money, I'm going to convey every dime of it to the landowners. I'm not trying to save any money on them. So.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
I'd just like to say this is one, I've been coming to fiscal court meetings for a year. This is my second up here. It's one of the hardest decisions I've seen in a year. It's not something that I've taken lightly. I think the Greens know. I've met with them, talked with them. It's not a good situation to be in, that's for sure.
I agree.
I think, Tim, we that have farmland, we really value it, and I
Yes.
can understand, and I agree with you.
So with that, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Magistrate McCollum?
Aye.
Magistrate Berry?
Aye.
Magistrate Moran?
Aye.
Magistrate Struthers?
Aye.
And Judge Snyder?
Aye. Thank you very much. And we hope that this is resolved peacefully and to the satisfaction of all parties involved. That I'll call up Representative of the Humane Society Animal Control to give us their reports.
Hi, I'm Bridget. I've been animal control for 5 years, but I'm also the shelter manager, so I'll answer as best I can. We do have a new ACO that started last week on Wednesday. Her name is Alyssa Davis. Very excited about her. She's got a lot of college education with animals, so we're real stoked about that. Our applications for the executive director has stopped on Friday, so hopefully they'll get us a new one here pretty soon. Our adoptions are up, so that was really exciting. They went up in December. Usually it's pretty good for Christmas presents they like to do, but it went a little bit down. But this month we're actually skyrocketing, so which is not normal. So maybe we're shifting seasons on adoptions, not really for sure. But so far everything's going good. A little low staff, but we're making it work. So is there any questions about anything for me?
I'm glad you were able to get another ACO, animal control
Yes,
officer,
thank
hired,
you.
and I know the ongoing search for director is hopefully coming to an end quickly.
Yes.
But thank you for all you do. Thanks for pinch hitting and taking up the extra slack during this time. And anything we can do to help, let us know.
All right.
I'll entertain a motion to accept in the record the animal control report.
So moved.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Any other questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. And with that, I'll ask Renice Abner to come up front and offer both her report and her fee projections, her fee projections for the year.
Good morning, everyone. I have several things. I have the monthly report for December, the quarterly report for the last quarter of 2018, and the yearly report. I also have the annual settlement for 2018, the budget estimate for 2019, and the annual order setting maximum amounts for deputies. If I could do all that at the same time, is that okay?
Give it a shot.
Okay. The monthly, the December totals for the excess fees, $85,221.47. Total paid to the county in December, $114,203.46. Quarterly totals, excess fees, $259,707.42. Total paid to the county for the last quarter of 2018, $357,098.68. Yearly totals, Excess fees, $1,148,815.25. Total paid to the county for the year, $1,610,779.10. That is about $24,000 more than we paid in 2017. And again, I need to reiterate that with our business that we do and the reports that we make to transportation and revenue, it operates on a calendar year versus fiscal year. So just need to say that. The annual settlement for 2018, I have that in the report there, and that's basically just a total of the revenue that we collected in a year's time. And then the budget estimate for 2019 is basically just a repeat of that number. We start out with what we ended with in 2018. So that's basically what that is, and it's about $200,000 more is what we collected in revenue, in receipts, versus 2017. So, and my annual order setting maximum amounts.
Before you do that,
yes.
let's go ahead and make a motion to accept in the reports. Renisa just referenced monthly, quarterly, and yearly.
That's the yearly.
With all those.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the monthly, quarterly, and annual reports from the county clerk. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and next.
Okay, and now I have my annual order setting maximum amounts for deputies, and that includes the salaries, overtime wages, vacation and sick leave, health insurance, insurance, like workman's comp, our HRA account, everything is balled into one, and I'm going to have that at $1,130,000, and that's the same amount as I proposed last year.
And was accepted last year. So, any other questions about that? Again, this is the maximum amount that she has to report according to KRS. Her actual budget will be determined when we budget together in the spring.
But it's the same as last year.
It's the same.
Thank you. I don't mean to give you a hard time, and I came to talk to you about that, but
Yeah.
not knowing what our legislators are doing to us, everything seems to be being pushed down to the counties,
Right.
including paying for the retirement system that we've already put into.
Yes.
And we did what they told us to do, and they didn't do what they should have done, and now we're having to pay for it, and now they're threatening, or maybe 12% a year for the next 10 years. It's I don't know how we're going to do it, so it scares me, but I appreciate you keeping your budget down and doing what you've done.
Motion to accept that report.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. Motion and a second. Any other questions of Renisa? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Renisa.
Thank you.
You also have in your packet Jailer Amy Brady's report. Anything you want to add? Ron?
Let you all know that the policy manual, they're reviewing it, and they'll have it for approval the next court meeting. And we have confirmed 5 inmates that has the flu. And 55 have been in an area where they've been prescribed Tamiflu. 165 inmates were vaccinated for all 4 strains.
Good luck.
Yes.
Good luck. Any other questions about the jailer's report? And I would encourage any of you, whether you're on the jail committee or not, if you have questions about how this report is generated, please go visit Lori or me.
Beth, our meeting is when? Thursday?
Thursday at 10.
At 10 o'clock? Okay.
Jail committee meeting Thursday at 10. Motion to approve the jailer's report.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank
Right after that, you have in your packets the sheriff's report, and again, this is just a record of their collections and disbursements. We get this once a month, I believe. And we have David Crafton here, or Sheriff Brady, but it's pretty much just a recital of all the income and outgo when it comes to tax collections down at the windows of the Sheriff's Department. So
This is not the end of the year. No, sir. Okay, so this, you're $58,000 short of budget, so we've still got plenty of time.
Oh, yeah. We're only 6 months through. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Any other questions? And I'll say that the folks downstairs do a very good job at this. If I'm not mistaken, there have not been any audits that were anything other than perfectly clean the last several years or since Sheriff Brady took over. And last year's audit pegged the job the Sheriff's Department did in collecting money down to a reconciliation of $11 difference when the acceptable variance approved by the state is $20,000. So that's how accurate they are, with a lot of money flowing through their office.
Do we need a motion to accept?
We do.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions on this? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Moving on. Mr. Gold, your report.
It's always tough following fee offices like the clerk and the sheriff when they're talking about millions of dollars. And I have a lot of checks today, but not a whole lot of money. Several checks, salaries, FICA, and retirement reimbursement, $1,176.89. Reimbursement or flow through for an assistant county attorney's salary supplement, $458.33. Dental and life insurance in the amount of $2.92. Health insurance, $241.29. Interest, $100.99. $53.68. $1.99 and $1.03 for a total remitted to the county $2,037.12, bringing the fiscal year total to date to $90,428.32.
And entertain a motion to accept those.
So moved.
Motion and a second. Any other questions of Mr. Gold?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ask Treasurer Brenda Ryder to come up and fill us in on claims and fund transfers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
These are your bank balances after paying claims today. Your day-to-day appropriation line should be at approximately 58%. I have additional claims from the road fund to Visa in the amount of $762.08. This is for parks advertising and road maintenance and repair expenses. Another to Visa in the amount of $683.51. This is for parks and program supplies. From the jail fund to Corson Fire and Safety in the amount of $1,226.88. This is the quarterly inspection invoice, and this is to come from the equipment repairs appropriation lines. Another from the jail fund to Cummins Sales and Service in the amount of $568.65. This is to come from the equipment repairs appropriation line, and this is for repairs to a generator. The last from the jail fund to CDW government in the amount of $1,195.65, and this is to come from the data processing appropriation line, and this is for a purchase of a PC and software.
Give you a moment to review the claims.
to get everybody's email addresses. I got this Friday, and I went through it, and what I wished I could have done was sent this out to everybody and said, I've got some questions about this, so that people have time to look at it and see what they do. And I apologize but if I can get everybody's emails, I'll do that in the future. But I've got some questions, and just because I'm new and I don't know and understand all of it. My first one, and I don't mean to be picking on the sheriff here, but I think it's the sheriff. Yeah, it's the mobile phones, $5,116. It's for 6 months service. How many phones do we have?
We've just switched over our.
I mean, it just sounds like a lot of money. I just don't know how many we've got and how we did it. If we bid it, that's just a lot of money.
Also, I think Deputy Crafton's been working with them. That is 6 months because there were some discrepancies in the billing.
Right.
And it's taken that long to get it cleared up.
David, if you don't mind pucking into the mic for the record.
Actually, Dwight Duncan was the one taking care of it, but we had a number of months that they kept submitting bills to us for phones that we didn't have anymore.
Okay.
And we kept telling them you have to get the bills right before we're going to pay them. They finally got it right, and so we had several months at the same time they had to be paid.
And I don't know what, are they restricted just to county use?
Yes. I mean, they're for the purposes of the
I understand,
sheriff's
but
office,
the IRS came in and made us go through our bill and for a year and go through and tell us what percentage, if I call my wife or my wife called me on the phone or whatever, I don't know if they're doing that.
No, they're not doing that anymore. They used to do that, and then they
Okay.
discontinued that practice.
Well, it was a pain
Yes.
in to do that, and I didn't know whether that was something we still had to consider or not.
Well, open records is something to consider in that.
I don't. They can see what my wife calls me. That's okay.
Well, I'm just saying that if something is,
She won't let me date.
If it's
Ken, just so you know, Master McCullum, in this building, other than the sheriff's department, we don't buy phones. We don't have county phones. We reimburse the cost for people who use their phones for business, a fraction
Right.
of their total cost. That's our current practice.
Okay.
I don't believe you buy cell phones for anybody at the road department, do you, Bill? Yeah.
Okay. On the had a tremendous amount of this. I'm on the second page now at the top. The classic automobile parts and labor, 10,800. It seemed like we got a lot of wrecks. Is that what we're having?
Engine blowouts, I believe. We had severe engine trouble, had to replace a couple engines and maybe some wrecks.
We had a couple of accidents, and then we had 2 engines that were blown in 2012 model cars.
Is
long out of warranty.
They're on warranty?
Long out of warranty. They were
Long out of
2012
warranty.
models.
Oh, okay. On the wrecks, what do we do? Do we get insurance recovery for some of that?
You get $2,500 deductible on those through KCO.
Okay.
I'd have to look at I'm not familiar with the individual accidents right off the top of my head, but one of the issues that we run into is that we're out of the cost of repairing the automobiles up front. Then if another insurance company reimburses us, that goes back into the general fund. So it comes out of our budget either way.
Are the accidents, or if you know, are they our fault?
I'd have to go back and look. We do classify our accidents as preventable or non-preventable.
Okay. And I'm just thinking about policy. If we do something in the future, if it is our fault, I know I think Eastgate Sureway, whenever the people, if you wrote down your numbers and did all your work and did it right, if there was a bad check came back, they covered it. But if you didn't do that, then you covered part of the cost. And maybe if it's our fault or our employees doing something wrong, maybe they should be some kind of penalty for 10% or something, just some kind of number to encourage them to not cause an accident or do something if it's their fault. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. On the
Can I say one thing, Charlie?
Sure.
David, I think a lot of the accidents down there, and correct me if I'm wrong, are deer this time of year. Most of them are in the fall, and now because of the deer, they hit deer a lot. I'm not trying.
Sure,
I'm just
and if
giving
it's
you
a
some-
deer accident, that's not
yeah.
preventable. That just happened. On the community care network, this is the third one down. It's a nurse visit. What is that about?
That is a part of the employee assistance program. That is the once a month nurse visits. That is actually for 87 employees that were seen for that period of time, previous month.
Okay, that's a preventative thing and that helps our insurance program if they're well.
It's designed to do
Part
that.
of our,
yes, sir.
it's part of our wellness package. that
Okay,
we pay for.
excellent. Then going on down to about the fifth or sixth line, the Involvement Inc. and it's got juvenile housing, 700. I didn't know they housed juveniles.
It may have to do with their ankle.
That's really their evaluations. That's a play on terminology
Okay,
right
just-
there
just not the
on
right-
wording.
Okay.
And you know, if you want a clarification on that, we can contact Involvement Inc. and get an answer back.
Okay. Then on the next page in the middle, it's got office supplies for the sheriff, LexisNexis Risk. What is that?
That is their law information detail that they are required to upgrade, I believe, probably monthly. It's similar on the similar lines of the law library, which is maintained partially in the judge's office.
It's a database for them, is it not? That's a research database.
Yeah, investigation.
Yeah.
Okay. And
I
then
think, what they've LexisNexis, in addition to like the legal research, they have a product that does like they can track people down.
Right.
And I'm assuming that's how they're using that. The LexisNexis service that they're using isn't necessarily the legal research; it's the way to track people down and find people. That's the
do you
service that they're
have
using.
access to that?
Through the Attorney General's office, they do give us one account where we can.
So you don't, but I mean, if you could use theirs if you needed to, or you don't have to. You don't need.
No,
to.
we don't need to.
Okay, so you could do that with your child support and do the same thing. Okay. Then the next line down, Judge's Internet, $410.
Okay, that is actually internet for the building wide, and that is rotated each month between different. The expense of that is rotated between different departments, be it the judge one month, the treasurer, the county attorney, clerk.
Just sounded a whole lot for just his office.
It is.
Makes-
It is building
Like I
wide.
said, I apologize for asking the question, but if I don't ask, I won't know.
That's for all county offices.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what she explained that's going around, and I just didn't know. Then we had, in the middle of the next page, we've got transporting prisoners to PTS of America, LLC, $4,321. That's who are they? And
That is a transportation company that the sheriff has an agreement with to transport prisoners. Is there something else?
That's correct. It's a private company that we employ to transport prisoners under certain circumstances, usually interstate.
is that cheaper than us doing it, or how do we make that decision?
I'd have to add, Dwight Duncan's the one that takes care of the prisoner transports, but we go on a case-by-case basis, and it depends on who we have available, but it's usually cheaper to have them do it.
If you can check with him on that and just get back with me sometime, what they do and how they do it, and what
It also, using a vendor, keeps you from having to devote personnel to this and getting them out of the county when it might help more to have them back here doing their job, right?
Well,
Right. It usually, like I said, it's interstate. It's a long distance transports that we have to devote a lot of personnel to.
Okay. 3 lines down, you've got Republic Services, Judicial Center, $708.
That is the dumpster that is at the Judicial Center, and that is part of the quarterly reimbursement from the expenses incurred there.
Okay. Then we've got another vehicle repair, Ron's Automotive, $747. Is that another engine or something?
That was a starter ignition repair.
Okay, in the next page in the middle, we got Telecom Audit Group, Judge's Phone Audit. I don't know what a phone audit is.
Again, that is part of That is a company that was brought on board to evaluate and cost savings for saving some of the telephone charges for the county, and that is another charge that is rotated through different departments.
But we'll be ending that soon. We brought on Telecom Audit Group 3 years ago to review all of our telephone lines and telephone bills, Magistrate McCollum, and they did a very good job of saving us several $1,000s by identifying deadlines that we were still being charged for, taxes that we were not actually should have been exposed to. That contract has basically ended. They had an ongoing service charge of $500 a year, I believe, or a quarter, one of the two. You remember what it was?
It's
Quarterly?
monthly or quarterly.
And we're actually going to end it now.
Okay.
After they do one more bit of service for us, they found a couple lines that were not
I
correct.
just had never heard of it and didn't know.
They actually did a very good job.
Okay. On page 2 of 5, third, fourth one down, maintenance and repairs of equipment, Dorsey, King, Gray, and Norman, Ohio Drive. It doesn't make sense.
That was for title opinions that were run as part of the Ohio Drive project. There was something that came up at the very last minute where the folks, what was it, down in Georgia, the EDA said initially all they needed were certifications that eminent domain had never been used on the property. Then all of a sudden it turned into they wanted full title opinions all the way back for quite a long time, and it was due within about a day and a half, and
Okay.
so we had to call in the cavalry there.
Okay. But
Eventually, because of the Ohio Drive project is new and is in the middle of the current budget, eventually those expenses, which should be run through the road department, will have a separate line item.
The Ohio Drive, all the
Ohio
drivers.
Drive.
Yeah.
okay.
And that was I believe, what was it, 8 or 10 title opinions that they turned around in about a day and a half. It was really, I'm glad they had the staff available to do it, because otherwise it was going to be a gargantuan task.
On the top of page 3 of 5, the JRB Computer Service, Ohio Drive, $7,000.
That was for the stormwater testing preliminary prior to the Ohio Drive project to beginning.
That is a requirement of EDA.
EDA
and
requirement.
It is a examination of all drainage that could be impacted by the project, and it's not cheap to do. We actually saved money on it by restricting it to just areas we thought would be impacted by the road. So even though it was $7,000, I think, Bill, you told me it was a recent study done for the city, or it cost $35,000 and up. Yeah, so we were able to negotiate it down.
I actually worked on Ohio Drive, and they checked our drainage quite often.
Yeah.
They come in and check, so couldn't we have pulled their records from the places and not had to pay?
And also, correct me if I'm wrong, but that expense will be reimbursed to us out of the EDA grant.
Okay. And then on page 4 or 5, Donald Peters Construction, the park bores. What did we bore there?
Yeah, that's for boring at the county fairgrounds underneath the walking trail. We do not have a boring machine. That was for the finishing the final stage of the underground drainage at the fairgrounds, and we needed to bore underneath the walking trail out to the drainage ditch.
Otherwise, you would have torn up the surface.
That's correct.
Okay. I just, when you said parks, I'm thinking of Sandy Lee Watkinson. I'm thinking the asphalt's not down yet. But
This was at
yeah,
the fairgrounds.
that makes sense. Okay. Then almost to finish, we got on page 2 of 3, next to the bottom, we've got Time Warner Cable. Oh, that's that's at the jail.
Yes, that's the landline telephone at the
Okay.
detention center.
It's not the video playing. They're watching TV. Okay.
No, it's part of Spectrum.
Okay. And then on page 1 of the, we got the landfill, the city of Henderson, $18,000. And what is our agreement with them on the transfer station?
We have a estimated budget that we pay annually, broken up into segments such as this.
Yes, approximately $9,000 per month.
It's We have agreed to pay a certain amount of money, I believe it's like $273,000 a year, to allow our residents to take we're paying for the residents to be able to take their home garbage, not their CD&D material, which they have to pay for if they go.
So basically, we're subsidizing the people in the county.
Yes, and we're also helping the city keep the landfill viable as well. They use portion of that revenue to help pay people and also pay for taking the garbage to Davis County, which they've contracted with to use their landfill because ours is full.
Okay.
So that's our portion of that.
And I'm assuming we haven't changed. I had somebody complain to me last night that they were told that they couldn't, it was in Spotsville, one of the suppliers there would not service them, and I thought we had it in our agreement that they had to service everybody within a certain mile of their area or whatever.
You mean like trash pickup?
Uh-huh, yeah.
Are they willing to pay for it is the answer.
Oh, yeah.
So they have checked with all the potential garbage pickup folks?
They have, but one of them wouldn't service them, but they were servicing close to a neighbor, and they were upset by that.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Part of our contract with the city is that I believe either, not Republic, but the other one, Advance, picks up garbage within a certain radius of the city, county subdivisions that are fairly close to the city limits, but not much farther out. So anything farther out of their service area, people need to contract privately with vendors. So if she wants to call, maybe we can give her a list of other vendors that might come service her.
I'll tell them that. There was some talk or discussion to make it mandatory for the garbage collection.
It is mandatory.
No, because they can take it to the landfill.
Oh yeah, well,
I mean
either or. They
yeah, but make it mandatory where
right.
Yeah, okay.
You're right.
I apologize. I'm
Sorry.
done. Thank you.
I have a question. On the fuel for the sheriff's department, do y'all have a charge account at Palmer's? Is that how you do it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I didn't know if everybody was issued a card or how it went.
Each car has a card that it's
All right.
One thing I point out when Treasurer Ryder refers to 58%, that's if you look on your revenue condition report, the larger of the two packets, the first portion are revenue, and the second half of that packet is appropriations, or what we spend. And you'll see as you go along the top of the document, you'll eventually get to percentage received. You see, in case of appropriations, and with the expenses, you'll see percentage used. When she says 58%, for those expenses that are more than just single payments, it'll express what percentage so far we've either received or used. And for ongoing expenses, if they're lower than 58% or above 58% is important to know. We always like to see revenues above 58% if possible, and expenditures below 58% at this point. And I'll note that on the very last page, 16 of 16, the very last line, grand total all funds, and this is expenditures, are at 45.2%. So we're 13% under budget on expenses for all departments. Each of them vary a little bit, but to be 13, I always keep track of that number pretty closely, and as well as the percentage used throughout the expense report. So that's what that 58% refers to, and I use it as a good gauge of how we're doing against budget. And if I have any questions, I go see Brenda Ryder. You'll see some of those expenses that are already at 98%, for example. Many of those are one-time payments. Some of those are not. Some of those are line items that, for whatever reason, they're way ahead of budget, and we need to fix it or work with that department head or elected official to tell us what's going on. But otherwise, that percentage is a good reference, just so you know.
In that same vein, you're looking at your revenue should be, if you're a revenue that doesn't come in like our taxes do at the end of the year, whatnot. But I was looking at the transient and net profits tax. They appear to be low.
Well, net profits usually don't hit until tax season because, companies have to determine their profit before they figure out what they owe us. Up to $2,000 is our cap. So we receive a lot of those February, March, April into May. Would you agree,
Yes.
Brenda? Yep.
Now, does the transit and hotel tax, doesn't that go to the tourists?
Yes, sir, and it's a direct in and out, and that only represents 3 months for one entity at this time.
Okay.
It's a flow through.
Webster County, Air County, that money is taken out. It's not, they take it when people pay their bills, and I think the county, so it's somebody was keeping it, which is a theft, and I think the county attorney had to threaten some of their people with criminal charges before they finally came through and paid it, and I just didn't know if we...
And like I said, that represents 3 months, and it's been an average of about $300.
And I believe we only have maybe two.
We have 2 now.
hotels out in the county.
Oh,
One of them's
okay.
Farmer and Frenchman.
Yes.
Okay. One of them is
True Vine Inn.
True Vine
on
Inn.
Highway 41 out by the bridge.
And the other is
It's just those 2 that I know
just those
of.
2. So
Okay.
hopefully the remittance from Farmer and Frenchman will increase significantly here soon.
They can never get them finished.
Any other questions about any of those reports? And you have some transfers?
Yes. You should have a list in front of you of transfers. What this is transferring within the existing budget from one line item to another for whatever reason, to cover overages, to adjust for changes in that particular line item as initially budgeted. To the sheriff vehicle repair line, transferring $20,000. And this is being transferred from the bailiff's salary line, $15,000, and transferring $5,000 from the sheriff uniform allowance appropriation line. The next is transferring to the sheriff prisoner transport appropriation line, $10,000, and this is coming from the sheriff's office supply appropriation line. Okay. In the road fund, transferring to the recycling building maintenance and repair appropriation line, $5,000. Transferring to the recycling equipment repairs maintenance line, $7,000. Transferring to the road department rock materials, $11,874.56. The total of these 3 transfers is coming from the salt appropriation line in the road fund.
And the elected officials, department heads who request these transfers work with Brenda to explain them and make sure they're what they truly want. We don't make the decisions about where they come from and go to ourselves. They work with the elected officials to do that. And for that last item, the salt, just know that the road department right now has a mountain of salt, well in excess of what we've needed lately. So it's not going to put us in any tough situation with road salt. Is that fair to say? Yeah. Yes. Any questions?
And just like you were saying, on let me see, this 2 of 16, it's the overtime is at 61%. The sheriff's health insurance is at 61%. I think your health insurance is about 60-something%. Vehicle repairs at 114%. Transporting prisoners are 126.9%, and vehicles purchases are at 77%. The conference and training, but those you just do pretty much one time. They were the ones that I just noticed that are above.
We keep a close eye on those.
Yeah.
And if it gets to the point where they're at 90 or above, we work with the elected official, department head to understand what's happening and deal with it. There are some cases where they have no choice. If we wreck another 3 or 4 vehicles, you just got to compare them.
Watch out for deer.
I will refer you to, in our general fund, we have a contingency line item contingency fund. It's got almost $400,000 in it. We build that into the budget to address unexpected overages that can't be handled through normal budget transfers within the elected official department heads' regular line items. We save that for unusual circumstances or projects that we decide we want to do, midway through a fiscal year, things like that. So that $400,000 is there to kind of backstop any of these expenses.
I'd make a motion to accept the reports and to approve the transfers.
We have a motion. We have a second. We have a second from Magistrate Moran, correct?
Correct.
Any other questions of Brenda? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. We started out the day with a room full. And now there's not. I was going to ask for if anybody would like to speak for the good of the county, but Chief, you're the only civilian here, and you're kind of a half civilian. Beth, you want to say anything for the good of the county? No. Mr. Ubiat?
I'll make it brief, Beth.
This will get better as it goes along.
Just wanted to update fiscal court. The road department was active both Saturday evening and Sunday. We called our people in at 6 p.m. right when the snow started on Saturday evening. We worked them for 6 hours of overtime that night. We only had one incident where one of our trucks slid off the road, and they slid off of a state road. I'll make mention of that, not a county road. But anyway, no injuries, no damage to the truck. We got it out. We didn't even have to call a wrecker. We used one of our own vehicles. Sunday, we had no incidents whatsoever, and worked from 10 till 6 hours after that, till 4 that afternoon also. The note on the salt, we have 800 tons of pure salt down at the Riverport in a salt storage facility. We mix on a 3-to-1 sand salt mixture, so that 800 tons comes out to be 3,200 tons when we mix it. So we have ample supply, and that doesn't include what we have in our salt storage building at the road department. It's already mixed. So we have enough to cover us. That's one of the reasons we took the transfer out of our salt line. And so we're also looking for snow again this weekend, unfortunately.
I want to reiterate more compliments to your road crews. They got out in tough weather and on weekend and did a good job. I got a lot of compliments from people about the amount of roads they were able to get to both Saturday and Sunday. So, okay, anybody from the audience like to speak for good of the county? If not,
I'd like to say something. I'm sorry.
I'm going to go around. Magistrate Southard, anything you'd like to say?
I'd just like to say thank you to the road department. I actually had people contact me and compliment you, and y'all make us look good when that happens. Thank you.
Magistrate Moran?
I would also like to thank the road department. I had several positive comments as well.
Yeah. Magistrate McCollum?
I'd like to thank the road department too. The city Lions are having their auction in a couple of weeks. I got donated 2 tickets to the game against UK against the number 1 team in the nation, Tennessee, coming up on February 16th. That will be in the auction. They're having the live auction at Rookies. The 16th will be that Saturday night. I think you go to that most of the time. So this will have to be sold before that. But anybody that needs tickets for that, they need to get them. So.
Make a good bid. Master Barry.
Thanks to the road department as well, Bill. Bill, where I worked, of course, at the sheriff's office for 26 years, and Bill's always worked good with us, and especially to Bryant back there with the rescue squad and all of the volunteer firemen. And they're all the big word there is volunteer, and they are a great help. We have to have them. So thank you all.
Mr. Gold.
All good, Judge.
Wow. I think I've never heard you limited to just, it's all good, Judge.
I'm ready to go.
Wow, I had a speech written. I'll say that not only am I thankful that the road crews are out there doing this thing, but the sheriff's office, thankfully, did not have any accidents. They were out there all night on Saturday, of course, doing what they do, and it was a fairly quiet weekend for the sheriff's office, which is a blessing. I do want to say that eminent domain proceedings are very tough. Negotiations over land acquisition for public projects like this are very tough. And I want to say again that we had hoped we would not be at this point, but we are, and we have to protect the county taxpayers and also do everything we can to enhance the county and make it as optimum as possible for economic development. I feel for the Williams family and the Green family because this is not what they wanted. We're trying to be as fair as possible. We have tried to be as fair as possible. In the course of that last year and a half, it's gotten emotional, as you can understand. We tried, both Magistrate Alexander, in whose district the airport fell when he was serving here, and I tried to educate the families about what was going on as much as we could. We tried to assure them that we would do everything we could not to force it to this sort of vote. And I know Charles Alexander promised the families that he would not vote for eminent domain proceedings if it came to this point. Now, I don't know if he was still on the fiscal court, whether that's what would have happened, but regardless, here we are. And again, it's not easy, and I'll repeat, it's not over. The process is not over. There are many things that could happen, and again, the families will get to appear in front of a neutral body in our judicial system to make their case. So just want to reiterate that, and with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor can leave.